As you will have seen by this title of this video is going to be about creating wood power, and I'm going to be saying about the amount of powers these powers give, and I'm going to be showing all of the power sources you can get in create mod survival mode, and I'm also going to be saying what sort of things are good for different stages in the game and good for different reasons. And I'll also be showing later in this video a really good power source for when you get a little bit later in your create mod survival world. So let's get straight into this. So we're going to be starting off with the hand crank, which produces 256 stress unit, and this is good for early game and powering things like mechanical presses when you go in early game and you can't really afford to make any other power sources, but you want to get like maybe a set of engineer's goggles. And that brings us on to the water wheel. So the water wheel is also a really early game power source. It produces 256 stress units at the max power, and to get max power you need one block either on this side or this side, as you see here, and you need water flowing all the way around and then along the bottom. I'd just like to say that this bit in the video I actually got wrong. The actual limit is 220 SU if you've got a soul sand block here and these two blocks, a water source creating bubbles coming up here and around like this. So this is good for, it's fairly compact and not quite as compact as the hand crank, but it's quite small still. And if you're maybe wanting to make a door that opens, these are good maybe just to have like in a wall or something if you don't need too much speed. And that then brings us on to the windmill, which has a max capacity of 8,192 stress units, which is quite good as these are still a fairly early game power source as they're quite easy to get. So this has of course got a bit of power taken off as it's got a speed controller, but what's good about these is you've also got enough power to get a speed controller on it. So if you want it to be faster, you can just make the speed faster with a speed controller, and anything over, I think these take just over 1,000 SU, so anything over 1,000 SU is good as you can actually use a speed controller to make it faster. So that's the windmill. These are also good for still fairly early game, and they do produce a good amount of stress units for how easy they are to make. And that brings us on to the next thing, which is the encased fan, which actually I haven't got here as I haven't needed it yet, and it's still fairly hard to make for early game. It's still fairly easy, but it doesn't create that many SU. It only creates 64 SU, and for how hard it is to make, it's not really worth it as this creates more SU and I think it's easier. So as you can see, you need a propeller for an encased fan, and they're not really designed as much for actually making power, but they do make power, but I would not use it as a power source as they are not the best. If you are wondering what the setup looks like for an encased fan, this is it. So you've got a netherrack block with a flame on top, and then you have the encased fan with a lever. As you can see, if I turn this off, it stops, and then that will then start this, and the heat from this will make the fan spin, and as you can see, you've then got an output. I would recommend a water wheel over an encased fan. As you can see, it's quite a lot easier as you just need a large cog wheel rather than a propeller which uses more materials than a water wheel. But that's one thing that is good about the encased fan, and that is that it's even more compact than a water wheel, as all you need is the encased fan and some sort of heat below it, such as lava or magma or flames. But that now brings us on to the best power source in the game, which is the furnace. The furnace is quite hard to craft because you need the furnace engine, as you can see here, which requires brass and a brass casing, and you actually need a flywheel as well to create it, as you can see here, which requires brass and a mechanical crafter. But as you can see here, it creates a load of power, and if I just pop this in and pop one of these in, you can see it creates 32,768 SU with a blast furnace, which is the best furnace for this as it creates the most power. So with a normal furnace, it just creates half of this power. With a blast furnace, as you can see here, it will create 32,000 stress units. But that also brings us on to a really good power source with these, which means you don't have to constantly be refilling this with coal and iron. And as you saw, I just took that out. But I'm going to show a way that you can actually do this automatically, and you can also fill it up automatically and just have the iron taken out automatically, so you never need to refill this or touch it again, and you can have multiple of these creating as much power as you want. So I'm going to hop over to my redstone testing world and I'll show you the design I have made. So this is what I've designed. It's similar to what Tango Tech made, and I'm aware that he has already made one, but this is slightly different and slightly more reliable as he used a timer, but if you logged off and logged back in whilst it was still smelting, the timer may mess up. So what we've got here is basically it will detect when this runs out. So if we put some kelp blocks in there, so that's what we will be using. I'll show a farm for that later, but as you can see, then there is a button on the back to make that drop down, and then it will come back up into this chute where it's sucked by an encased fan, and then it's sucked back into this chute where it's held until this power runs out, where it will then drop back down, and then it will repeat that and just keep making power. And as you can see, it's making 32,000 stress units at the moment, and you can line them up as you can see here. So these already have the kelp blocks in, and these are all going, and this is then creating 131,072 stress units, and this is an example of them being lined up. And then you can make this into something even bigger where it's actually not using these mechanical motors, which are only creative, so it's using its own power to power the actual thing. So this is it. It's got 16 of these module things, and sometimes these actual motors stop if you leave the game, but that's very unlikely once you've got it going, so you will never really need to click the buttons. But sometimes when you leave the game and it's not refueled, you need to come along and just click one of these buttons. But this is creating a maximum of 491,520 SU, and it appears to be jumping a bit, I think, because as it runs out, it takes a little time to actually get it running again. And then you can also make the kelp automatic. So as you can see, this is just a simple kelp farm. So it will come around, connect here, then this will go into the chest. This isn't actually currently linked up, but it will then go around and then get pressed into kelp blocks where you can then take it out and put it onto the conveyors. So that's how you would make this completely automatic for a Minecraft survival world, making almost 500,000 stress units here. So if you want to see a tutorial on how to make all of this, leave a comment if you want to see that. But that's pretty much the video done. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments and I will try to reply to them. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next episode.